what exactly did you feel? What was it that was going on in your mind?
I somehow struggled mentally, want to just go home and not play at all.
4 years golf professional, playing and traveling all around the world. Rachel Thommen.
In good times, I love the pressure, but as a professional athlete, you kind of have to love pressure because otherwise we're in the wrong spot.
In order to make this podcast 1% better every episode, I need your help. Please subscribe, like, and interact with my content. You'll be helping me improve over time to make this podcast the #1 platform to talk about mental health in the sports industry. Thank you and enjoy this episode. Rachel, from golf player to golf coach, what is the biggest difference from your new job now?
I would probably say I have like a proper routine now. I can go out on weekends, not traveling as much as I did before. But I would say, yeah, I really enjoy it to be at home and yeah, just to have like a normal day-to-day routine and a normal job.
It's been like 2 years since you've decided to stop playing golf. Was it directly clear that you wanted to be a coach, or did you have something else in your mind as well?
So I would say when I was still playing, during my playing time, like the 4 years I had as a professional, I wouldn't say I was thinking about being a coach because I wanted to just like put my all I have into golf, and I wasn't really thinking about the future, more like in the present. But as soon as I kind of started to not enjoy it as much as I did before, I started to think about, yeah, what's my job gonna look like in the future. And I always felt like it would be nice to just like stay in golf just because of the experience I have as a player. Yeah.
So that's something you loved, and you started when you were about 8 years old. When you started, how fast did you know that this was more than just a sport for you?
It wasn't until I was 12, I would say. So my first 4 years, it was just like going on the golf course with my family and joining the junior trainings in Thun. And then when I was 12, more or less, the junior captain, he told me just to like go play a few national events. And then that was the first time I played with other girls, I would say, at my age, same level. And I won like the under 12 Swiss Junior Championship. And then I realized, oh, I might be good at this. So, yeah, I would say that was when it really kick-started with like all like the squads, like the regional squads, then national squads. And yeah, I would say more or less at 12, I knew this might be more than just a hobby.
But back then, it was pleasure most of the time. It wasn't like thinking about winning tournaments and stuff. It was just like having fun, being on the golf course.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just enjoying with my friends in the club and just playing a bit. And yeah, that was more or less it. Yeah.
Speaking of your friends, was it something you were telling your friends that you were playing golf now in school, for example?
In the beginning, I wasn't. I felt like, so that was how much, maybe 20, 25 years ago almost. It wasn't really the sport everyone was playing. It was known as the sport for the rich and the old, and I wasn't really gonna tell my friends because I just wanted to be like everyone else. That's, I guess, typical. But at the time when I was 12 and somehow, yeah, won the Swiss championship, and I've gotten better, and I had to take time off school to just go to tournaments and stuff. I started to tell them, and yeah, they were fine with it, and yeah, I don't know why I was afraid, but I guess that was just like a little girl who wanted to fit in, yeah.
So the reaction wasn't as bad as you expected it to be.
Not at all. No, very supportive.
All in or nothing was kind of your slogan when you started playing golf. Is that something you still live by as a coach now?
I wouldn't say I live this slogan as a coach that much as I did as a player. It's I my career has taught me a lot about self-care and yeah, like just caring about your friends, your family, and I really try to sometimes just take a step back and take time off if I need to, so I don't really force it that much anymore as I did as a professional. But I feel like I had to do that back then, and this chapter allows me to just like, yeah, sometimes take a step back.
Looking back at your career as a player, what was your favorite part about being a professional?
So for me, it was amazing to just play golf and really just transform my passion into my job, my daily job. I really enjoyed like meeting a lot of people. I'm a very social person, I would say, and I always loved spending time with all the other players and traveling and just discovering a lot about myself, I would say as well. I loved like most of the time the pressure, the just the game itself, and just to yeah discover everything around it really. Yeah, I feel like I had an amazing time when I was a professional. There couldn't have been anything better happening to me.
There's also parts that probably are less preferable that we don't see from the outside. Can you take us on that journey? What was stuff that maybe wasn't that nice in the moment?
I feel like sometimes people always thought, oh, she's traveling again. Oh, she's in South Africa. Oh, she's in the States. She's there. She has a great life, like traveling and playing. And sometimes it wasn't as easy, I would say, especially as a professional. You really had to, what I didn't really know before I turned professional, you had to sit down and plan your trips, your yeah, like your tournaments. Somehow you were almost a bit alone, and you had to how can I say that? Just yeah, care about yourself. Before I always had like the national team or like the federation who just organized everything, and all of a sudden you're alone, and you just had to do everything by yourself, and it sometimes wasn't easy to just yeah, I felt like I couldn't focus as much on training. I had to put a lot of time into organizing and finding cheap um, hotels and flights and everything to just like somehow get through the year with the money you had from sponsors. I felt like that was probably the downside of it, to yeah, being at home a lot and just organizing instead of focusing on the main thing, which was the training. And yeah, I somehow underestimated that before I turned professional.
Now, being a coach, how would you just describe yourself as a coach?
I would say I'm quite easygoing. I know that I could be a bit more tough, I would say, at least with the good players I have, with the squad players. But I feel like I'm trying to remember what I had when I was in their footsteps. I've in their shoes. Sorry. Um, I always wanted to have fun in trainings and enjoy trainings. I also had coaches back in the days where like I hated to go to trainings because it was not enjoyable at all, and I somehow really want to give that to my players these days, to just come and have fun, because I feel like it's gotten quite serious the last 10 to 15 years. It changed a lot since I was a player. And yeah, for them to just come and enjoy, that's probably the most important thing for me, but still learn and work. That's like just have a good mix, I would say. And but I'm still kind of finding my way. I think, yeah, this has to happen in the next few years, but I feel like this comes by experience as well.
Do you have one specific person or coach that you look up to, or was it kind of picking the best from all of the coaches you've worked with in the past?
I feel like I'm picking a bit. I had a lot of really good coaches in the past, and I feel like I'm trying to somehow pick the best things they had, and yeah, try to really live about that and coach the way they coached me. I wouldn't say there's someone specific, but I feel like I also have to somehow gain my own identity. So I don't want to copy anyone that I had. I somehow, yeah, just want to do my things as well, but really just taking a few things from them is very important.
If you could be someone else for one day, who would you be and why?
I think that's a very hard question, because the way I live today, or my job, and my family and friends I have today, it's very very hard to change. I really like the place I'm in today, so I wouldn't really want to change with anyone, or at least I don't know who I would. Um, but yeah, I think I'll just stay me all the time. So I would say I'm not gonna change.
Fair enough. It's okay. Going back to your career, you were really ambitious as an athlete. Did that change since becoming a coach, or is that still the same?
I feel like when you're ambitious in your life, that kind of stays, I would say. Of course, it's different in a different way today as it was as an athlete, but I'm still trying to learn and get better every day. Now, as a coach, I'm trying to have a good apprenticeship, like my coaching apprenticeship. I try to have good grades. I really try to work towards that, and I think, yeah, when you're an ambitious person, you always stay that way a bit. Yeah, so I would say I'm still that way.
Being a coach now, is the mindset and everything that happens in the brain a topic you're working with your athletes as well, or are you strictly focusing on the technical part?
No, I think it's very important to uh, teach them about mindset. I mean, it depends. I teach some members at the club that maybe need a bit more technical input than mindset input, but I always try to come, even with them, I try to combine it a bit. And with the squad players, I think it's more important to really teach them about mindset. So for me, I really try to analyze things with them, try to talk about tournaments when they come back after a round, and just to reflect on what they did. So yeah, for me, golf is a lot about mindset on also like on a high level. It's probably most about that. So I think it's good to prepare them towards that. So yeah, definitely teaching about mindset is important.
Do you teach them a lot from your experience, or are there certain techniques or stuff that you can learn them that you learned like during your coaching education?
I for sure speak about my experience a lot. I think it's very important. Also, when I was a player, I always looked up to coaches who played themselves because I feel like they were talking um, out of experience. So I tried to somehow remember, because for me it's not a long time ago. Some coaches they've played 20 years ago. For me it's 5 years ago when I was in their shoes, and I just try to talk out of experience and also things I've learned myself through my sports psychologist I had back then. Yeah, I just pass them my I pass along my information I had from a few years back. Yeah,
How important was mental health or the mindset, the psychology during your career as a professional?
probably most important thing for me. I feel like at one point everyone can play golf on a very high level, but it's just it comes down to who can actually play that high level in tournaments under pressure. And for me, because I'm a very emotional or like sensitive person, it was always the mental side that was very interfering when I wasn't playing well. I would say I struggled quite a bit with mental problems, and I was always seeing a sports psychologist. She was on my side quite a bit, and we worked through some really tough times. So yeah, it's for me it was the most important thing as a professional athlete.
You openly spoke about working with a mental coach or with a sports psychologist. What exactly did you work on?
For me, it was always very important when I turned professional to just make it as professional as I can, and for that it was important to work with a sports psychologist, and she kind of sometimes you feel like people think that you just talk about your golf rounds and you play a shot or whatever, but it's so much more. It's when you're living, when golf is your living, your job, you kind of have to talk about your whole life. So also about your family, your friends, your support system. It's you talk about your whole life around golf, and it's so important to realize that somehow everything has to be aligned, not just golf itself, but also your team, your surroundings to perform well. And that's what I realized when I was a professional, that it's just it's that that's how it has to go, basically.
Speaking of struggling with that mental health, what exactly did you feel? What was it that was going on in your mind?
I feel like when I turned 16, that was the first time I somehow struggled mentally. Before that, I was just having fun, playing, not thinking a lot. And with 16, I started to think. And I had some really tough times already when I was 16. And then they came and went and came and went again, these times. And I was afraid sometimes when I was on the golf course, and it's somehow absurd because you feel like on the golf course nothing can happen. You can't hurt yourself or anything. I mean, that's different in other sports. I mean, gymnastics or yeah, sports where you can really hurt yourself if you're not prepared well. But in golf, it's somehow like up in your head a lot, and you can be afraid, and this feeling is just cruel. It makes you want to just go home and not play at all, and but it only shows in tournaments, so that's very hard. It's hard to practice as well, to overcome this feeling. So but it was, I was afraid a lot.
Was it being afraid of, for example, one bad shot or like one whole tournament that wasn't going that well?
It was a bit of everything, I would say. I had a lot of high expectations I put on myself. I felt like I have won a lot through my junior years, and then I felt like I have to keep up, and it wasn't. I guess no one in my family or my friends, they always supported me the same way, but I somehow felt like I needed to show them that I'm still able to win or play well, and it was more or less the whole tournament that I really felt afraid of. And then in the rounds, obviously, I mean, it wasn't enjoyable at all. So, but I came to the tournament and I was already a bit afraid. And yeah, that was really bad feeling.
Over time, you kind of learned to deal with that fear you had. Can you take us on that journey? What specific tools did you use in the end to deal with that kind of?
Yeah, so as I've mentioned, I worked with my sports psychologist, and we somehow developed some methods that could help me on the course, and also preparing for the course. And before going out on in tournaments and stuff, I always did a lot of meditation. And on the course, I did a lot of breathing and just tried to really stay in the present and not thinking about the future too much. Sometimes it worked out a little bit better, other times, of course, a bit less, but this really helped me a lot. And we kind of found out that when I prepared the way I wanted for a tournament, with regeneration, practicing the way I wanted, seeing all my coaches, uh, I always felt the best somehow. So I really tried to just prepare myself the best I could for the tournaments in order to just being ready for it.
So that was also kind of routines that you developed, and then you kind of did those things in a certain way always.
Kind of did, I would say. I feel like that's what I lacked the most as a professional player. I should have really continued these routines from tournament to tournament. I sometimes, when I had maybe a little bigger break or something like that, I fell out of the routine, and it immediately showed in the tournament. So when I was doing it, it was great, but I should have stayed with it a bit more than I did in the end. Yeah, reflecting now.
You once said the mental capacity is the essential in golf. How did you mean that?
It's just what I already mentioned a bit. At one point, everyone can play on a very high level, I would say, but it comes down to whose whose mental capacity is the best during that tournament. You got so much time between shots, and I feel like your thoughts are with you all the time. There's other sports that are way quicker, and I feel like you don't have that much time to think. And in golf, there's so much time to think. You walk from shot to shot, and yeah, you really have to get your thoughts in order, just to, yeah, stop like bad thoughts to come. So that's why that I say like the mental thing is the most important thing, and also because as a golfer, you're very close to the top, but you're also very far away from it, because technically everyone is very good, and but it's just, yeah, the mental part, the capacity is the most important thing, and that's what makes the difference in the end.
Do you think the importance of that mental capacity is clear? Do we all know that there's a lot, or that the percentage is really high of that mental capacity, or do you think that there's not enough yet that happens around that part?
I think it's for sure more than when I was a junior. I see it now as a coach when we work with the juniors, with national teams. It's very important already there. Like the subject is talked about, and we know way more about it than we have back then. And it was always, when I was playing, it was always my idea to see a sports psychologist. It was never somehow the national team coach who told me to go. It was always, I knew already back then that it was very important, but I think not everyone did. So also when I was a junior, we were a lot of girls playing, and then from time to time, so when we were 18, there weren't a lot playing anymore, because they just couldn't handle it, I would say, or they just had better options to go about it. And that's why I think it's so important. And nowadays we know way more. We know more about it, and they also, in the squads, they realize it now, that it's so important for everyone already at the early age.
In the federation or in the clubs, is there a possibility for the players to reach out if they don't feel like they're like on their best level?
In the clubs, I wouldn't say too much. With like regular amateurs, they all also realize that there is a lot of mental things involved, but they all play because it's their hobby, so they don't really care about it that much. But in the federation, they start to work with sports psychologists now, and they know the importance of the subject. And I think it's great to see a change on that side.
Did you have an athlete coming to you and asking for advice, or even like when you were at the tournament, like them being in a situation like that and like you seeing them struggling, like wanting to help them?
As a coach, I haven't really experienced it that much to actively give help. I always just try to talk with them out of experience, and of course we somehow reflect on rounds, and I just try to support them with maybe good ways to, for the next day, then for the next round, to go a bit better about the mental aspect. I think it's still a subject that not everyone is too much aware of, and it's also, I always struggle a bit, because I feel like when they're like 13, 14, 15, they should just still enjoy and not think about it too much. But then at one point you somehow have to introduce them to the subject as well, because I know it's going to be such a big part. So yeah, sometimes you just have to find a good way of not overloading them, and but still give some information.
Being a spectator, it seems like you need to love pressure as a golf player. Was that the case back when you were playing?
I think in good times I loved pressure, but I wouldn't say I love pressure. It's probably the wrong word, the wrong way to put it, because when you're playing well, I somehow don't feel like you you felt the pressure during the round, but when you weren't playing well, you really felt it. So I wouldn't say I wanted to feel it. Every time I played well, I didn't really feel it. I played in that flow, you would say. So I wouldn't call it that way, but obviously as a professional player, as a professional athlete, you kind of have to love pressure, because otherwise you're in the wrong spot.
You were saying before that like training those pressure situations is hard or even impossible. Is there still a way that you can kind of simulate that, like being at a tournament and having that pressure of that next put or shot?
I would still say that it's very hard to practice it, but we still kind of try, like we kind of do games that put you in that state of mind. It's never going to be the same. That's just fact, I would say, at least not for me. But we really try to do games during training where they somehow get into a pressure situation, which might help when they're out on the course in a tournament. So that's the only way you can kind of try to practice when you got pressure. Yeah.
Like going back to your career as a professional, you being in one specific moment, can you take us in one specific tournament, for example, where you kind of were struggling with that pressure or stress or fear that you've felt that in that moment?
Yeah, for sure. So when I think back, there's been during my professional career, unfortunately, there've been a lot of moments I struggled quite a bit. I felt like I had to, when I was struggling the most, I always thought about all the people around me, that I don't want to disappoint them. And that was a very hard feeling to have, because I knew that even if I have a bad result, they're still gonna love me or respect me, and they're still gonna keep on working with me. But for me, it was always very hard to not think about the people around me when I was playing. I almost felt like I played for them as well, although I never had any reason to. No one ever gave me a reason to. I was quite lucky in that case, but still, it was a very hard feeling, and I almost wanted to escape and go and leave the course. It was I never did that, because I always felt like I needed to overcome these situations as well as an athlete, but it was sometimes, I mean, almost unbearable to stay on the course. It was not enjoyable at all.
Is that something that you have for the whole round, or can it also go away from one hole to another one?
For sure, it always starts with that feeling, but that's already in the preparation the days before, that you just don't feel like playing at all, and you just think, I mean, I have to, because that's my profession and I need to play tournaments. So you go out with a very bad feeling, but then sometimes during the round, I wouldn't say from hole to hole, it can be different, but maybe there's like different phases during the round, where maybe in the end you kind of feel something that, like something positive even, where you can say, oh, it actually feels good. That happened to me as well, where I somehow found something to turn my feelings around, and then in the end I felt like, oh, the last few holes were actually not that bad, and I enjoyed being here. But yeah, I felt like most of the rounds where I had a bad attitude before going out, it almost stayed a bit that way.
So it doesn't really matter if it's the first hole or the last, the pressure or the stress is kind of the same.
Yeah, exactly. Most of the times I would say I rarely somehow manage to turn it around during a round.
If you're playing a tournament, you're kind of out there on the course on your own. I mean, it's the caddy who's with you. Maybe he's a close friend or someone that you know. But is it something you discuss with your caddy if you're struggling, or are you really literally on your own?
So when I was playing, I was never at that level where I had like a professional caddy. So most of the time, when someone caddied for me, it was someone I'm very close with. I had family members, my boyfriend at the time, who supported me, and I always talked about it because they were close to me. But for them, it was also, I mean, they saw me struggle mentally a lot, and they always tried to really be there for me and push me. And when I was at my worst, I would say, mentally, it was always nice to have someone close, um, some going with me for a round and supporting me, because at least I felt a bit safer. Um, Although it's, when I say it now, it sounds ridiculous, but that's the way it felt, and I was always glad to have them around.
That mental state or that flow that you mentioned before, was that also something that you kind of had techniques to keep that up? Or was that just like you felt that it was there, but you didn't know how to keep it?
I never really found a way to keep it and find out how to get into it. My best rounds, I knew that I prepared well and I was ready to go out, and I also enjoyed going out. And that's when I somehow was in that state, but I couldn't really say how to get it back when I was at my worst. So yeah, I've never really had the chance to find it out in the end. Yeah.
We're closely coming to an end of our conversation and looking in the future. If you have one wish for the future in terms of mental health in sports or specifically in golf, what would it be and why?
I feel like people need to be more aware of it. I hope that they also now, as I mentioned in the federation, they're trying to be more aware of it. And I think it's very important to talk about it as well. I see how the world has changed a bit. I mean, we have so much more influence from everywhere nowadays. Also, now when they're younger, I mean, when I was 10, 11, I was still just going out, playing, having fun. And these days, you see a lot of parents already somehow probably putting a lot of pressure on their kids. And I just hope that these kids are gonna stay around, and their love for golf is bigger than what the influence around them is making with them. So I really hope that the awareness is going to grow through the years as well, because I think it's even more important these days because of all the influences.
Do you think it should also be something you work on regularly, like the technique, for example?
For sure, I would, not when they're younger. I think it's important to make them aware of it. I also think they already feel it. Um, so you have to make them aware a bit earlier, but also just, yeah, make them enjoy the game for a long, long time, because that's the most important thing in the end. If they want to turn professional, it's gonna be hard, but it's still important to enjoy everything around it, because it's, in the end, it's still the greatest job you can have.
Just quickly going back to your career or your work with the sports psychologist, was it something you did regularly or just when you felt that it was already the case that you needed to work with someone?
I think when I was younger, I just, it was very, in that moment where I knew, oh, like I'm struggling, I just have to see someone. But then over, I think over the last 5, maybe 6 years, 5 years, I would say, I worked with someone regularly, because I just felt like it was so important to do so, and it's just a part of the team basically you have during your professional career. So it's very important to just keep on growing with your career. I think it's so important to just, like, yeah, have him or her by your side during those years where it's very important to have support.
We have a tradition on this podcast where the last guest leaves a word for the next guest without knowing who they will be leaving it for. And the word left for you is ability to work in a team.
Which is very important for a golfer. I would say, I mean, it's for a lot of people, they would say, oh, a golfer is just by themselves. But for me, as a professional, used to be professional, it was so important to have a team. I mean, of course, in the end, you're gonna be on the golf course by yourself. Maybe you have a caddy who supports you in that moment, but in the end, you just have to play every shot yourself. That's obvious, but it's so important to have a good team around you. It's important to have good friends, good family, good coaches. That's a whole team. So I think it's very normal to have the ability, or I hope at least it should be normal to have the ability to work in a team, because it's not it's a single sport, but in the end, you're very grateful to have a good team, and yeah, most important thing.
I think from the outside it's hard to see like who is behind that team, but like as you mentioned, you've worked with the sports psychologist, you have a technical coach, you have maybe some physiotherapists who are with you, you have a caddy, you have family and friends, so it's a big team behind, and I think physical coach obviously as well. So I think there's a lot of people behind that you kind of don't see when you're playing alone on the golf course. But yeah, Rachel, thank you so much for your time. It was super interesting to hear your journey from being a professional player to becoming a coach now. And I'm excited to see where you're headed next. And I hope that you still live by your slogan, all in or nothing. I think that's something which is super important to live as, and to give the kids or the youth athletes as well. Obviously, as you mentioned, the pleasure should be priority when they're young, but I think they can learn a lot. And also your ability to reflect on things and being open about the mental health, for example, I really look up to you for that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.